Good evening. This is Poems from Me to You, number 338. Yes, I always get the numbers a little screwed up in my head. Number 338. This started as Facebook Love during the pandemic in 2020, and here we are on YouTube 4 years plus later. And I always want to be here every day, like I did in the beginning, and it just never happens. I think it's been another 3 weeks since the last time I was here. And today I felt a great pull to read some poems because it's been one of those weeks, maybe week and a half, where poems saved me. During the pandemic, I started reading poems in the evening to calm myself, and also because my friends were mostly singing and playing music, and while I could also do that, I didn't want to. And that time kind of outed me as a poet. And while I usually read other people's work, which I will do today, I also read my own. And I do have a piece coming. It's been about a week. It's just simmering, but it's not ready. So poetry, it's had a little renaissance the last few years, but those of us who love it, and those who don't understand or just don't care for it, pass it right by, and that's fine. But what I find with poems is that when I can't get my breath, when I'm very worried, very afraid, very jittery about something, if I can calm myself a little bit and take a breath and read, and then read aloud, I feel a little better. And when I moved all this over to YouTube, I found an audience so much wider than what I had when I was only on Facebook, which is where I am right now. It's kind of exciting to see how many people are interested in poetry. So it's summer. It's just almost midsummer here with the 4th of July coming right up. And I generally have a theme of being in love with nature and sharing poems about that theme, as well as writing many of my own in that theme. I recently picked up a new book. It's a collection of poems put together by the 24th Poet Laureate Ada Limon, titled You Are Here, Poetry in the Natural World. And I have just cracked the spine of this book, so fresh. And I have to tell you, there's nothing nicer than a new book. An old book is a little nicer. So, thinking about what poetry does for us, and what that was during the pandemic when so many of you joined me night after night, and it got to the point where if I didn't show up, or if I was late, I would get pinged. I would get texts and Facebook Messenger notes. Where are you? Are you okay? Do you have COVID? It was astonishing in the best way to see that me showing up day after day after day, especially in those beginning months of the pandemic, made a community. And nothing matters to me more than that. Community. The sense of like hearts coming together, and also those of us longing to connect, even if we don't agree, if we have gotten to that point in our evolution of soul that we don't have to agree, we just want to feel the connection of that mutual longing to be real, to be seen. And I'm sure a lot of themes popped up in your head just as I said that. Right away I thought of Pinocchio. So many things from childhood always come to me when I'm thinking of ways to connect. So I'd like to give you 3 pieces from this collection from Ada Limon, none of them by Ada Limon. So the first piece is from a poet and novelist and children's book writer named Carrie Fountain. By the way, none of these poems in this collection have been published elsewhere. They are all new. So even if you're familiar with the writer, you will not have seen this poem unless you crack this book open before me, which you might have done. Okay. This first piece by Carrie Fountain is titled, You Belong to the World. As do your children, as does your husband. It's strange even now to understand that you are a mother and a wife, that these gifts were given to you and that you receive them, fond as you've always been of declining invitations. You belong to the world. The hands that put a peach tree into the earth exactly where the last one died in the freeze belong to the world and will someday feed it again, differently. Your body will become food again for something, just as it did so humorously when you became a mother, hungry beings clamoring at your breast, born as they'd been with the bodily passion for survival that is our kind's one common feature. You belong to the world. Animal. Deal with it. Even as the great abstractions come to take you away, the regrets, the distractions, you can at any second come back to the world to which you belong. The world you never left, won't ever leave. Cells forever, forever going through their changes, as they have been since you were less than anything. Simple information born inside your own mother's newborn body, itself made from the stuff your grandmother carried within hers when at 12, she packed her belongings and left the Scottish island she'd known, all she'd ever known, on a ship bound for Ellis Island, carrying within her your mother, you, the great human future that dwells now inside the bodies of your children, the young, which, like you, belong to the world. You Belong to the World by Carrie Fountain. I really like the part about Scotland. That's where my people came from. This next piece is not very long, and it's by one of my favorite poets, Joy Harjo, who was also a poet laureate of the United States, just like Ada Limon. I really enjoy her work, and also she sings. As a singer, I love that. I love that she writes and sings. You can find some of her singing on YouTube if you look for it. This piece by Joy Harjo is titled 8. Grasshoppers devoured the sunflowers, petal by petal, to raggedy yellow flags. Squash blossoms of small suns blessed by dewdrops flared beauty in the morning, until an army of squash bugs landed and ate, then dragged their bellies from the carnage. Field mice chewed their way into the house. They eat anything sweet and leave their pebbled shit in staggered lines to the closet door. Hungry tree frogs clung to the screen. Their curled tongues catch anything with wings driven to the light. We found a snake hidden on the porch. There were rumors in the yard of fat mice frolicking here. The night is swallowing daylight. we sit down to eat. Eat by Joy Harjo. Fabulous. Before I read the next one, I don't usually use coarse or curse words when I do these, but the word shit in my book is not a curse word. It is merely coarse. When I was young, we were not allowed to swear. We couldn't even say, "Oh my God." And I remember that I would sometimes hear my mom say, "Oh shit." And of course, like all kids, I was mischievous in going to her and saying, "Am I allowed to say it?" And she thought, and had a little bit of a mischievous look on her face. And she said, "Well, I don't really want you to, but it's not hurting anybody. Poop is already poop. You're not making it worse than what it is." So when I was raising my kids, I did the same. I said that shit is coarse, but not a curse. So, welcome to my happy use of the word shit. Okay, one more piece. This one by Phillips, who has written 16 books of poetry, wow, and was a professor in St. Louis for many years before he moved to Cape Cod. This piece is called "We Love in the Only Ways We Can." "What's the point now of crying when you've cried already?" he said, as if he'd never thought or been told, or perhaps he hadn't. "Write down something that doesn't have to matter, that still matters to you. Though I didn't know it then, those indeed were the days." Random corners, around one of which, on that particular day, a colony of bees, bound by instinct, swarmed low to the ground so as not to abandon the wounded queen, trying to rise, not rising, from the strip of dirt where nothing had ever thrived, really, except in clumps the grass here and there that we used to call cowboy grass, I guess for its toughness, stubborn, almost steadfast, though that's a word I learned early, each time the hard way, not to use too easily. We love in the only ways we can. I'm going to read that 2 or 3 more times because a lot is there and it's not funny. That's 3 poems for you today. Poems from me to you, formerly Facebook Love. Thinking today about the ways that poetry calms us, heals us, brings us back to ourselves. And if you are lucky enough to be a person who can access your inner creative being, it heals you through writing as well. I'll be back. See you again.